Iver Johnson was a U.S. firearms, bicycle, and motorcycle manufacturer from 1871 to 1993. The company shared the same name as its founder, Norwegian-born Iver Johnson. After closing, the name was resold, and in 2006 Iver Johnson Arms opened in Rockledge, Florida, selling shotguns and M1911 pistols. However, the new Iver Johnson Company does not have any parts, guns or information relating to the pre-1993 company. Iver Johnson. Iver Johnson was born in Nordard in the year 1841, in Nordard, Sogn og Ordane County, Norway, and later emigrated from Norway to the United States. He was educated as a gunsmith in Bergen in 1857 and had a gun store in Oslo. He married Mary Elizabeth Spears on April 9, 1868, in Worcester, with whom he had 3 sons and 2 daughters. Iver Johnson immigrated to Worcester, Massachusetts from Norway in 1863 at the height of the American Civil War. Johnson was a gunsmith by trade at the time, but also worked as an inventor in his spare time, which would come in handy later on as he sought new and creative uses for his partially idle manufacturing equipment, a thought process which would eventually lead him and his heirs to diversify the corporation's businesses. His early work involved not only gunsmithing locally in Worcester, Massachusetts, but it also included providing designs and work to other firearms companies, notably Allen and Heerlock, for whom he made so-called pepperbox pistols. Johnson Buy and Company. In 1871, Johnson joined Martin Buy to form the Johnson Buy and Company, merging his own and Martin Buy's gunsmithing operations. During this period, Johnson and Buy filed for and received several new firearms features and firearms feature improvement patents. Their primary revenues came from the sale of their self-designed and manufactured inexpensive models of revolvers. Not much is known about Martin Buy, as there is very little documented information about his life. Buy and Johnson filed jointly for and were awarded multiple patents together, mostly related to firearms designs, beginning in 1876. The Compania Euro unregistered trademark S name changed to Iver Johnson and Company in 1883 upon Johnson's purchase of Buy's interest in the firm. Buy continued to work in the firearm industry for the remainder of his life. Iver Johnson's Arms and Cycle Works, the company's name changed again to Iver Johnson's Arms and Cycle Works in 1891, when the company relocated to Fitchburg, Massachusetts, in order to have better and larger manufacturing facilities. The Iver Johnson complex, as it is known today, resembles other abandoned Industrial Revolution-era properties in New England. As has been the trend, the complex is often a target for real estate developers who intend to exploit its buildings' industrial brick aesthetics and open floor plans to create retail, residential, or other types of usable space. Iver Johnson died of tuberculosis in 1895, and his sons took over the business. Frederick Iver John Loviel, and Walter Olof, each had vastly different levels of involvement in the company, ranging from executive leadership to barely any involvement at all. They shepherded the company through a phase of expansion, as bicycle operations grew, then converted to motorcycle manufacturing and sales. They also saw the growth of the firearms business and the eventual restructuring of the company to focus on firearms and related business as they divested non-firearms concerns, such as the motorcycle business, in the face of growing firearms demand, World War I's armaments industry expansion, and other factors. As family ownership waned and outside investment via publicly traded stock and mergers partnerships took hold, the company changed ownership and moved several times during its operation. The company eventually dropped Cycle Works from its moniker when that part of the business was shut down. The business successfully weathered the Great Depression and was buoyed by the dramatic increase in the market for arms leading up to and during World War II. As a result of changes in ownership, the company had the first of 2 major relocations in 1971 when it moved to New Jersey. It moved again to Jacksonville, Arkansas, and was jointly owned by Lynn Lloyd and Lou Imperato, who also owned the Henry brand name, before it finally ceased trading under its own name in 1993, at which time it was owned by American Military Arms Corporation. Iver Johnson firearm models. Iver Johnson nomenclature refers to its top-rake revolvers as safety automatics. These are revolvers, not semi-automatic pistols. The term OE safety automatic refers to Iver Johnson unregistered trademark S transfer bar safety system and the automatic ejection of cartridges upon breaking open the revolvers. Safety automatic, standard models with external hammer, first model, single post latch system, second model, double post latch system, third model, double post latch system, adapted for smokeless powder, safety automatic hammerless, first model, single post latch, second model, safety lever added to face of trigger, third model aka new model, no safety lever on trigger, adapted for smokeless powder. William McKinley assassination. Presidential assassin Leon Czolgosz shot and wounded U.S. President William McKinley in Buffalo, New York on September 6, 1901 with an Iver Johnson .32 caliber safety automatic revolver. The revolver is currently on display at the Buffalo History Museum in Buffalo. Robert Kennedy assassination. Sirhan shot and killed presidential candidate United States Senator Robert F. Kennedy in Los Angeles, California on June 5, 1968 with an 8-shot Iver Johnson .22 caliber Cadet 55A revolver. Bicycles. Iver Johnson bicycles are classic examples of early American bicycles, and during the bicycle boom of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the company had a very productive bicycle manufacturing and sales line of business. Today, Iver Johnsons are considered to be classics by vintage bicycle collectors, and are considered to be especially pleasing from an aesthetic point of view. O.F. Mossberg worked in the bicycle plant and then started his own firearms factory. Even when they were new, IJs were marketed and had a reputation for being very graceful-looking, well-built, and engineered for performance. Iver Johnson sponsored the career of bicycle racing champion Marshall Taylor beginning in 1900. The most noted IJ model was the truss bridge frame, which featured a curved tube under the top tube to strengthen the frame for use on the rough roads of the early 20th century. Bicycle production ceased in 1940 with the build-up of arms production prior to World War II. Today, Iver Johnson bicycles are highly collectible and are no more rare than most other major manufacturers' products from that time. The name Iver Johnson is well known amongst vintage firearm collectors, but aside from that, bicycles would be the brand's next most popularly associated product. There is even an Iver Johnson bicycle on display at the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of American History in the America on the Move exhibit. Motorcycles, launched in Fitchburg, Massachusetts in 1907, the Iver Johnson Company motorcycle division was born from the conversion of a line of business that had been manufacturing bicycles for some 23 years prior to that point. Ultimately, the arms division of the business was growing so rapidly to meet demand that management decided to focus on that market, and as a result motorcycle operations closed in 1916, bringing to an end 33 years of total cycle operations. In the Illustrated Directory of World Motorcycles, author Mirko Dosset reports, Iver Johnson's Arms and Cycle Works had been building bicycles for 23 years when it entered the motorcycle business, and had started manufacturing firearms many years earlier. The Iver Johnson design was unconventional in many respects. The top and middle frame tubes were bent to arch over the engine, and the front fork was an interesting leading link, leaf spring design. Customers could choose either rigid or swing arm rear suspension. This was known as a keystone frame, one that employs the engine as a stressed member. The side valve singles and twins had two different valve mechanisms. The belt drive single featured a longitudinal camshaft driven by worm gears, the shaft extending forward through the case to drive the magneto. On the V-twin and chain drive single, the cams were incorporated in a large ring gear driven by a pinion gear on the crankshaft. The magneto on these engines was chain-driven. The V-twin was designed with offset crank pins, which provided evenly spaced combustion strokes, so exhaust notes sounded like a vertical twin. The engine featured both mechanical and hand-oiled pumps. Final version of the twin were equipped with a planetary clutch, with either an Eclipse 2-speed hub or a single-speed. The twin was rated at 8 horsepower, and the single at 4.5 horsepower. In 1916 the market for weapons began to seriously outstrip the prospects for motorcycle sales, so the company turned its attention to firearms and tools. As Dissett notes, there were options and variations of models of IJ motorcycles available, such as belt drive versus chain drive, or solid rear versus suspended swing arm, but mostly they were categorized by engine type, either V-twin or single-cylinder configurations, with other characteristics being considered as options, and not necessarily defining traits of a particular model. The specifications for the basic model classifications are: V-twin, engine, side valve V-twin displacement, 1020 cc power, 7 to 8 HP wheelbase, 58 in weight, 265 lb top speed, 65 mph starting, pedal drive, belt or chain, single, engine, single-cylinder fuel, gasoline displacement, 500 cc power, unknown wheelbase, unknown weight, unknown top speed, unknown starting, pedal drive, belt, according to Jeffrey L.H. Tank's History of the Motorcycle. Iver Johnson advertised their machines as mechanical perfection, a boast that was not entirely unbelievable given the number of advanced design features in especially their later models, such as dual crankshafts, nickel alloy machined parts, chain drive, and a hand-operated 3-speed gearbox. In fact, amongst collectors and researchers such as Tank who have the benefit of hindsight, Iver Johnsons of the day, such as the 1915 Model 15-7, are the finest period examples of motorcycle engineering of the day, along with a very select few others, such as Scott's. In modern times, Iver Johnson motorcycles are as rare and collectible as any of the products of the myriad other early short-lived American motorcycle manufacturers that existed during the early days of the technology, such as Holley or Henderson, or even from British European manufacturers like the Scott Motorcycle Company or Braw Motorcycles or Daimler Maybach or Hildebrand and Wolfmer 1/4 Lehr. Considering that production ran for only 10 years, with 2 of those being used for the start-up and shutdown of operations, examples of Iver Johnson motorcycles at all are rare, let alone those in collectible condition, and collectors should expect to face considerable difficulty in finding them and great expense when they are ultimately found. And of Iver Johnson and revival of name, though all vestiges of Iver Johnson as a going concern are now gone as of 1993, there is still a great deal of interest in the company and the collection of their products, although that interest is focused on their firearms business and not their motorcycle business. Where their motorcycles are collected, they are collected as examples of early motorcycles and in an effort to catalogue all of the early manufacturers, not so much out of inherent interest in Iver Johnson motorcycles themselves. In 2006 the name was reused as Iver Johnson Arms Incorporated in Florida as manufacturer and importer of firearms, but not related to the old Iver Johnson lines. The new firm was renamed from Squires Bingham International, founded in 1973. References. https Familizich Orgam 9.1.1 per meter 68 a JYK https Familizich Orgam 9.1.1 per Newton 4 ZGBF 4, other sources, Goforth, W.E. Iver Johnson Arms and Cycle Works Firearms 1871-1993 ISBN 978-0-9787086-0-3, Thomas, H. H. The Story of Allen and Helock Firearms ISBN 978-0-913150-73-3, external links, Iver Johnson Firearms, armscollectors.com, Iver Johnson Firearms Company.